Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to today's webinar. We're going to start the presentation at 12:02 to make sure that more people get in on time. Thank you to all for being here right at noon. And we're excited to share more about this program in 1 minute. As we wait for some more people to filter in, I'll just encourage you to re-familiarize yourself with the features of Zoom. There's the Q&A box, there's the chats. Sarah here will be monitoring the chats and the Q&A box throughout this webinar. So please feel free to enter your questions and speak up in chat as we go through things. All right, I see that we have 30 people now on the call. This webinar is being recorded, and we will be posting a recording to CDA's specialty crop website after the fact. So if you want to rewatch this webinar, or if you have a colleague who wasn't able to be here and would like to see this information, that will be made available to you. I want to start off and just introduce ourselves in case we haven't met. My name is Sam Hahn. I'm the program manager here at the Colorado Department of Agriculture of the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program. And I'm joined today by our award-winning grant specialist, Sarah Miller.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Today, we want to provide some information about the program, help orient you to this federal block grant program, help you understand its purpose, the state and federal priorities for this program, help you understand who is eligible to even apply for these funds, talk about how much funding we anticipate having available this year, when your projects are allowed to start, what our plan is in the different phases of this round of funding in 2026. And we'll also be walking you through our brand new application in the AccessGov platform. You may know that in the past we've used Google Forms or even a Word document. We're excited to be squarely in a new online system that will hopefully make your life easier applying this year. And then we'll wrap things up by talking about what resources we've made available to you as you write your applications. So let me start off and talk a little bit about the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program. This program was originally established back in 2004. Funding went out for the first time in 2006. And in 2008, this program had a permanent appropriation. So this program has been around for a long time, supporting specialty crop stakeholders all across the United States, including here in Colorado. As I said at the very top, this is a federal block grant program run out of USDA AMS, that's the Agricultural Marketing Service. And when I say the term a block grant program, that means that USDA awards CDA a block of grant funding that then we distribute to subrecipients in our state. So the funding flows from the federal government to the state government and then to our subrecipients here in Colorado. We are also the ones who administer this program. So if you are awarded and become one of our grantees, you'll be working very closely with myself and Sarah over the 3 years of your project here in the state. Now, this is the Specialty Crop Block Grant, and you may be wondering, what are specialty crops? What qualifies? This is a definition that is set by USDA, and it includes fruits and vegetables, dried fruits, tree nuts, horticulture, and nursery crops. So no animal products here. USDA has a very helpful list that I do want to show you very briefly, outlining what are the different commodities and plants that are commonly considered specialty crops. So I'm going to reshare my screen here and show you what this USDA website looks like. We link to this in the application and in our website, so if you're worried about being able to find this in the future, worry not. On this page, which is hopefully titled, "What is a specialty crop?" the USDA outlines that definition I just went over, and also makes the note that specialty crops have to be cultivated or managed crops, and they have to be used for food, medical purposes, or aesthetic gratification in order to be considered a specialty crop. And for value-added processed products, the weight has to be at least 50% specialty crop in order to be considered. USDA then has this long list of different plants that are commonly considered specialty crops. It is not comprehensive. This is just the most commonly considered plant. So if you look at this list and you don't see a crop, it doesn't mean that it is not eligible. But I would encourage you to reach out to us for some information to check and confirm that that crop is in fact eligible for this program. USDA has broken this up by different types, fruits, vegetables, different types of herbs and spices. These are all sorted alphabetically, so it's easy to find what you're specifically looking for. And I'll note at the very, very bottom here, there is a list of ineligible commodities, which is also helpful for you to review as you're applying. I will note that sometimes it depends on what the product is. It's not plant specific. I'm in particular thinking about sunflowers here. Sunflower oil is considered an ineligible commodity under this program, but things like sunflower seeds for confectionery use would be considered a specialty crop. And similarly, there are different types of corn. Here we see white corn, and we see field corn here. These are also ineligible commodities, but sweet corn is considered a specialty crop and eligible for funding through this program. So I would encourage you all to look at that website if you are curious to see what different crops are eligible through this program. All right, I'm going to return to the presentation here. And I'm going to hand it over to Sarah to talk a little bit about the purpose of this program, the priorities of the state, and who is eligible to apply for this funding.
Thank you, Sam. So first we'll go over the purpose of the program, which is to enhance specialty crop competitiveness in Colorado. And some of those things that we're trying to achieve is marketing and promotion, research and development, availability and access, and local and regional and national challenges as well are things that all specialty crop projects aim to address. Next slide, please. So the USDA has priorities and CDA has priorities as well. These are priorities that we're looking for that your project will address. So the USDA priorities are food safety, including the GAP-GIP food safety certifications, research related to conservation and environmental issues, new crop varieties, pest and disease control projects, nutrition knowledge and consumption, efficiency distribution, as well as sustainability. And in addition to these USDA priorities, the CDA has our list of priorities as well that we're looking for in your projects. Particularly, we're looking for projects that address profitability and market access. We're looking for projects that address labor issues, as well as agricultural technology, and projects that address pest, disease, and climate pressures. And we're looking for projects that are timely, that are addressing real problems in Colorado that will make a difference for not just one specific business, but all specialty crop producers in Colorado. Next slide, please. So who can apply? With that in mind, that this is supposed to benefit a wide array of producers. So producer groups, organizations, and associations, state and local governments, colleges, universities, nonprofits, and other stakeholders are all eligible to apply. And we have some notes over here. The first note is that it cannot solely benefit an individual. So if you are looking for funding to put a well on your property so that you can continue to produce lavender or something like that, that particular project is not eligible because the well only benefits your organization. So the second note is that it has to benefit a broad group, region, or segment of specialty crop growers. So if you're looking for funding to expand research on lavender for, the longest scent or the best scent that it could possibly produce or something like that, that would benefit a wider array of specialty crop producers. So that would be a good project. Let's see. So Sherry has asked, so for-profit businesses, yes. Yes, Sherry, for-profit businesses are eligible to apply for specialty crop block grant program funding. And on that note, you're very welcome, Sherry. So you can apply as a single organization or you can combine your efforts through for-profit businesses with nonprofits, educational institutions with nonprofits. Those are all applicable, eligible people who can apply. Okay, let's see. Next slide. Yes. So in 2025, we expect to receive $701,000 in funding that we will be able to award to about 10 recipients. And we have some notes here about the amount of funding that we received in previous years because the funding for this year has not yet been announced. So these are just estimates based on previous year's funding. Last year, we had over $724,000 and we were able to award 15 recipients. And in 2023, we had 678,000 and we were able to award 12 recipients. Next slide, please. So the project dates for the proposals will be January 1st, 2027 through November 15th of 2028. So when you're applying for your specialty crop block grant funding, the project start date can be no earlier than January 1st, and it will go no later than November 15th of 2028. It can be extended. This is a 3-year program. So you're applying, and after we contract, your project will begin and you'll be doing work and you will be reporting for 3 years. So if you finish your project in the first year, you will still have 2 years of work with us, of work with the USDA, reporting on all of the amazing work that you did for your project. So that is something to be aware that this is quite a commitment. It's long, and we'll go over more of the steps in the process later on. Next slide, please. Okay, great. So we're doing well on time. So now I'm going to pass it back to Sam, and he's going to get into the nitty-gritty about the different phases involved in the specialty crop block grant program, as well as some of the more detailed things around the application.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. And as we go through this presentation, again, I encourage you all to enter your questions in the chat, in the Q&A. Like I said, we'll have some time at the very end to address those questions. And also, as you put in questions that are particularly timely and relevant to what we're talking about in the presentation, we can address those live. So this round of funding is going to be broken up into kind of 3 phases. And our primary focus today is going to be on phase 1, this very first phase of the funding cycle, the concept proposal phase. Everybody who is eligible, Sarah just talked about the different types of organizations that can apply for this funding. If you are eligible, you are more than welcome to submit 1 or more concept proposals for projects starting in 2027. The deadline to get us a concept proposal is Friday, February 13th. We have, like I said, moved platforms. We've moved from Google Forms now to the AccessGov platform. And AccessGov allows us to automatically turn off applications. The application is set to automatically close at 5 p.m. on Friday, February 13th. So if you open up the application for the first time at 4:59 p.m. on Friday, February 13th, I have unfortunate news for you because the application will close and you will not be able to submit your application. So I encourage you to, 5 o'clock Mountain Time, yes, is the deadline. So I encourage you to take a look at the application form early, to start filling out your application, and to reach out with questions well before the deadline. We would love to get lots of questions 2 weeks or more in advance before the close. So please take a look early so that you can get our questions in. And if you encounter any issues with the form, please let us know. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this presentation and we're going to switch over and I'm going to show you what the actual form looks like. Here I'm going to share my screen again. Sarah, can you see the application here?
Yes, the application is up.
Okay, excellent. So when you go to our website, which we're going to show you a preview of in a second, help you see all the resources we've made available to you. When you click the button that says submit a concept proposal, it will take you to this page in Access.gov. You will see this nice little intro where we remind you of the deadline, February 13th by 5 p.m. Mountain Time. You are already attending or watching a recording of this informational webinar, so congratulations. The second point doesn't apply to you. And we are going to announce who has been invited to participate in the second phase of this process. When you fill out this form, when you submit a concept proposal, you are asking to be invited into the second phase, which is the kind of formal plan that we put together and submit to USDA for approval. So that is what you are submitting to be invited to apply to when you fill out this form in particular. We have some information about the project, and we note that you'll hear back on your application in late March or early April of this year. There's a link, like I said, to the plants commonly considered specialty crops, put here for your convenience, reminders about who's eligible, a list of Colorado's priorities for this year. We have 4 new priorities that Sarah just walked through, and then some more information about when and how these applications are going to be evaluated. Now, at the very bottom of the page, you'll see that there's only one instruction. You must create a username and password to submit the form, and you'll see this login button. If we go here, you'll be taken to a page. You can sign in with Google, with Microsoft, or you can set up your own page. You can see there's this button, sign up now, that you can click to create your password. I am going to go ahead and fill in my information because I already have an account set. Okay, when you log in, and the reason we ask you to log in is just so that the application saves correctly. This is a complicated application. We ask for a lot of information. The last thing that we want is for your information to get lost and for you to have to start over. We absolutely encourage you to have a separate document on the side where you type out all of your answers and save in your own files so that nothing gets lost. But we've also set it up and require a login so that the form preserves the information that you put into it. So here, the very, very first page, the contact information. We want you to put in the information for the person who is filling out the form first and foremost, right? If you are the person who is doing the hard work of filling out this application, we want your name, email, and phone number in case we never need to reach you about this application. Now, you may not be the point of contact. You may not be the person who's going to run the project long term. And in that case, we want you to say, no, I'm not going to be the point of contact long term for this project. And we want you to provide that information. If you are, great, you can select yes, and you don't have to provide any more information. But we want to be sure we have everybody who needs to be included on these emails from the get-go. So we want the person submitting the application, and we want the person who's going to be running it long-term to be included on all of our emails and communications about this application and this project. You can also add more people if it's not just you and that point of contact and you think other people need to be part of these communications. You can say, yes, I'd like to add more contacts, and you can add as many contacts as your heart desires. There's this helpful little button at the bottom of the page that says add another contact, and you can add a whole bunch of folks. All right, that is the very first page, pretty simple. The second page, we want to hear about your organization. First and foremost, we need the name of your organization, and we need that name to be the full legal name of your business. So if you have a tax ID on file with the IRS, we want to see your name exactly as it appears on your letter from the IRS. This just helps us when we get to the grant agreement process and just with tracking your application in general. We have a little note here, a little hint that we want that full name. So if you have an Inc., an LLC, something like that attached to your name, we want to see that when you fill out this legal name section. We also then want to see your tax ID or EIN. If you don't have a business set up with the IRS, you're a sole proprietor, you can put your social security number here instead. Now, in addition to the EIN, we need another number. This is called the unique identity ID. Some of you may have heard of the DUNS number before. This is what the federal government used to use to track grantees of the federal government. It is no longer used. There's a new number, the UEI. You can get a UEI through sam.gov. We link to it here. You must absolutely have a UEI in order to apply for this funding. It is a federal requirement. So if you don't have one, go to sam.gov and create one. Or if you're unsure, you can look up your status there. So be sure that you provide both your EIN in this line and a UEI in the line below. We asked for a little bit of statistical information. None of this information in this box is used to evaluate your application at all. It's just helpful for us on the back end to keep track of what sort of organizations are applying for funding from CDA and who do we award. So it's just for some internal metrics. It is not used to evaluate your project in any way. Mark any and all that apply and keep going. We want to learn a little bit about your business. You don't have to write a novel or a dissertation here, just a little bit of a snippet so we understand what your organization is and what you do so well. And we also need to know the physical location of your address, of your organization. What's the address? What's the Colorado County that you're based in? And if you have a different mailing address, we also need that. So if you say, my business address is not my mailing address, we're going to ask for that extra mailing address because sometimes we still need to mail you paper documents. So it's good for us to have this information again up front. The very last thing on this page that we ask for is for you to talk about your grant management experience. Like we've said, specialty crop block grants is a 3-year long grants with strict reporting requirements. And we want to be sure that the folks we award are going to be able to manage the requirements that USDA and we require for this program. So we want to see that you have some experience managing grants, even better if you have experience working with the states or the federal governments. And then we ask you to kind of list out what are the grants that you've received in the past 5 years. If you have 10 or more, you can cap it at 10. We just want to have kind of a record and see, okay, what is your track record managing grants? And for those of you researchers at one of our state's colleges or universities, we want to see your track record with grants. CSU, CU Boulder, Adams State, all of those great institutions have a long track record of receiving grants. So we want to know what is your particular experience if you were the one applying from one of those institutions. Okay. You'll notice too that as we go through, there are these little red text that notes that a question is required. You're not going to be able to submit the application unless all of those required sections are filled out. Okay, once we have this contact information, this organization detail, we want to learn about your project. This is the heart and soul of this application. This is where we expect you to spend most of your time when you fill out this application. You need to give your project a title, and you have to tell us what your start and end date are. Hopefully, we have provided the earliest and latest dates available to this program. You do need to go into the button and click and confirm. Otherwise, you'll get an error message when you go to submit the application. But if you just want the maximum amount of time that we can offer, you can automatically do that.
Hey, Sam, there's been a couple of questions that have come up about the grant management. Can we talk about those quickly?
Yeah, let's talk about them now.
Okay, so Marilyn has asked for the grant track record. What info for each one do you want there?
I think it would be helpful if you can tell us what is the name of the grant, when you got it, and how much it was, and who gave you that grant.
Yes, thank you. And then Andrew is asking, is past grant experience required?
It is not required, but I will tell you that it is a factor that we take into account when we evaluate and score your applications. So you will have a stronger grant application if you are able to show past experience with these grants. So not a requirement, but it is something that we are scoring and considering when we evaluate these applications.
Great, thank you. Those were the two questions that came up.
Thank you, Sarah. Um, Project title, start and end dates. Um, we also want to know if your project is going to be happening at those addresses you provided earlier. If the answer is no, you have a business address and mailing address, but it's going to be taking place at an offsite farm, or the project's going to be happening at a different location, you would say no in this case, and then we'll pop up this little extra box with project location, and then you'll say, okay, what is the address, what is the county, all of that. And if you have multiple project locations, you can add those kind of in order of importance. It's just helpful for us to see kind of where it's being, where it is going to be taking place in the state. Okay, this is about specialty crops. As you know, we want to know what specific crops your project is focused on. It may be simple. You may be focused squarely on potatoes, or you may be working with a wide variety of fruits and vegetables. We want you to be specific, so provide all the information we need here so we understand what are the specific specialty crops that you are going to be focused on with this project. Then we need a very brief description of this project, a kind of 10,000 foot view of what this project is. USDA requires this summary, and it is just a helpful way for us to remind ourselves what is the heart and soul of this application in particular, right? We want to know who's the one applying. Are you partnering with anybody to do this work? What is the work that you're going to be doing? What do you hope the outcomes to be? If you can put it in a single sentence, all the better. But if you need a couple more sentences, that's okay too. But we want it to be nice and short and succinct. The next thing that we want to understand, and Sarah said this earlier in the presentation, is we want to understand why your project is timely and important, right? We want to make sure that we are responding to the needs of specialty crop stakeholders on the ground now. We try and do our best to be aware of the issues that are currently facing folks in our state, but we don't know the nitty-gritty details of all of the different problems. So this is your opportunity to explain to us why your project needs to be funded and why it needs to be funded now. We are not experts in your specific situation, and our review panel of experts don't know every single facet of everything affecting specialty crops. So please, whenever possible, use language that a non-expert can understand. And if you're using acronyms or abbreviations, please be sure to spell that out really clearly so we can understand what you're talking about. We want to understand, okay, if you are awarded this grant funding, what are the activities and what is the timeline of this project? What are you going to be doing and when are you going to do it? That just helps us understand kind of what is the runway for this project and what can we expect to happen if we provide the funding you request. And then lastly, what is the goal of this project? What do you hope to have achieved by the end of it? Who is going to benefit? How many people is that going to be? And how is your project specifically going to help Colorado specialty crops be more competitive, right? That is kind of at the heart of this program. And we want to be sure that you kind of make that really clear to us. And then lastly, we want a total amount. How much total is this project going to cost? How much are you asking for us to fund? We're going to do a full budget a little bit later in this application, but it's helpful for us to see kind of in this section, what is the total dollar amount that you are requesting? Okay. There's another section here that's really only for folks who have participated in the program before, right? Some folks have received specialty crop funding for a couple of years and are working on similar projects. This is the space to say, okay, are you continuing work that we've previously funded? The answer is no. Great, you can continue on from there. If you are, you need to fill out a little bit of the section. Those of you who have participated in the program before, you know that USDA asks for this information. And so we're mostly trying to collect it on the front end to help us inform our choices and also prep you for success when we get to the second phase. We want to know what are the project titles we funded before? What years did you get funded? And how is this project different from those? How is it building on the work that you've done and had funded in the past? And we need a statement describing how this work is not going to be indefinitely reliant on specialty crop block grant funding. Okay. The next section is the daunting outcomes and indicators section. This is specific language that USDA uses when talking about how specialty crop block grant projects will be evaluated. You're required to pick at least one outcome, and I would encourage you to pick only one. And this is kind of a kind of broad swath of kind of what is the aim and goal of that project. You can see we list all 7 of these below on the application. You need to just click a box to say which of these is the outcome you're selecting. If you are awarded and you become a grantee and you have this 3-year project, you are going to have to report on kind of the measurable impact of your project every single year. So USDA encourages you to select one outcome, and you'll see this reveals some more of the form depending on which one you click. So if you click on outcome 1, you'll see the indicators for outcome 1 to show up. And you see here there are 5 different indicators with different sub-indicators. These are just the numbers. How are you going to measure the actual impact of your project? And we need you to enter estimated numbers for up to 3 of these. Again, you don't need to pick 30 different numbers you're going to report on for this project. It's going to be a lot for you to manage. It's going to be a lot for us to manage. It's going to be a lot for USDA to manage. USDA wants to see one outcome and up to 3 indicators, these numbers that you are going to report on to show the impact of your project long term. So we've linked to a helpful little sheet that USDA has prepared that shows all of the outcomes, all of the indicators, all of the sub-indicators with little notes on which ones you should pick depending on your project, how you would measure this, things like that. I would encourage you to look at that full sheet before coming and filling out this section. What is the outcome that best fits your project? And what are the 1 to 3 indicators that will help you best measure the impact of your project over 3 years, right? That's what we want to see in this section. You don't have to go crazy with the number of outcomes and indicators you pick. And again, it depends, depending on which outcome you pick, you get different options. If you pick outcome 2, you have different indicators than if you pick outcome 5. And these will stack if you end up picking multiple outcomes. But again, you only need to pick one outcome and 1 to 3 indicators in this application.
And Marilyn has asked, how can I measure outcome 1 or 2? She says she's going to take a look at the sheet, but it hasn't been very helpful in the past. Is that something we can touch on?
I can say that definitely there are some numbers that past grantees have had trouble tracking and getting good numbers on. I imagine that Maryland may be referring to indicator 1.5 under outcome 1, and this increased sales measured in percent change and things like that. I would say that looking at large scale industry trends can be tricky. The data is a little bit delayed. It can be an issue reporting to USDA. So I would take a close look and see kind of what are the numbers that you think will best reflect this project. And in addition to that, what are the numbers that you're going to be able to easily track and report on? So I would take both of those factors into consideration before picking any of the outcomes and indicators. So
Yeah.
maybe if 1.5 feels like it'll be tough to report on for 3 years, you can maybe focus on maybe how many consumers are you hoping to reach, or business transactions, or something like that. I hope that helps answer the question. We can also maybe connect offline. You can reach out if you want to discuss this further.
Yeah, another question has come up in the chat. It says, question about indicator 2.3, total number of market access points for specialty crops developed or expanded. Of those 2.3A, the number of new online portals created to sell specialty crops, does the market access points needs to be a sales platform or can it serve as a networking platform? Does the online portal need to be e-commerce or a social networking portal?
The way I read these, I would one encourage you to read USDA's helpful form for some more information. The way I read this indicator here is that yes, it is specifically for um, commerce of some point. I don't know if you need to use it for e-commerce exclusively, but I think it has to be an online portal for commerce of some point. That would be my response here. So if you're creating a portal or a database to help people find and connect, but there's no commerce happening directly through the portal, I would think that this probably would not be the right fit for the project.
As we go into the budget, Sam, a question has come up about what the max funding is. So I just
Yeah.
want to throw that out there for you when you get there.
Okay, great. Let me say one more thing about outcomes and indicators, and then yes, let's
Okay.
talk about the budget. Once you pick your outcomes and your indicators, then we want you to just describe how you are going to meet the numbers that you've said, right? You're going to give an estimate. How many people are you going to impact? How many e-commerce platforms are you going to launch? And then we want you to say, how are you actually going to meet that objective? And how are you going to measure that impact, right? If you say, I'm going to reach 100,000 people to consume more cantaloupe in Colorado, we're going to want to see, how are you going to measure that? How are you going to know how many people have, been impacted by your marketing campaign or something like that? And lastly, Sarah said this before, but your project can't benefit just you, right? It has to benefit a wider group. And so we want to understand if you're launching one, e-commerce platform, how is that going to impact not just you who's launching it, but everybody else, just as an example. So, and again, we are looking to fund projects that are going to have the highest amount of impact per dollar spent. So please keep that in mind as you're filling out this application. Okay, the budget. We have a question. How much is the maximum that I can ask for? And the answer is there isn't a set number. Sarah said we anticipate to be able to award $700,000 to subrecipients in 2026. That is our hope based on kind of trends in the past. We want to fund a lot of different projects. So having a $700,000 project is going to be a tough sell if that is all of the money we have available to award out in a given year. Typically, I will say we have projects that range from about $20,000 to a little over $100,000. And kind of the average that we've seen over the past 3 years is about 50,000 to 60,000. Again, you do not have to develop a $50,000 project if you have a $20,000 project in mind, right? Write the budget for the project you have in mind, but know that that is typically the range that we see in award because we want to be able to make sure that we're hitting a bunch of different crops around the state because there are lots of issues facing our specialty crop stakeholders. We want to be sure that we are distributing the money all over the state to address the issues across crops. So that would be my answer there. There's no maximum, but do keep in mind how much money we have available and how much we typically award out to folks. Okay, USDA allows you to ask for personnel, fringe, travel, equipment, supplies, contractual, and other costs. Indirect are not allowed for these grant funds, so please keep that in mind as you fill out the budget. You're going to want to put in how much you want for each budget. We'll sum it at the bottom automatically. Again, you've already told us how much the total cost is, so we're going to want to see that those two numbers match across the application, but we're doing the math for you in the budget, and then we want you to provide an explanation. You're asking for $10,000 in personnel. Who are those people going to be? You're asking for fringe benefits. What percentage are you going to be billing us for fringe? Travel, where are you going? For what purpose? Things like that. We want to clearly understand how much money you're asking for and what that money is going to go to. And the more detail you can provide in this space, the better. We also have some helpful tips, these little info boxes with information from USDA about these different costs and requirements. I will note that equipment is for special purpose equipment. that has a useful life of more than a year, right? You can't use these funds to build a well or build a shed or buy a truck. But if you need some special purpose equipment that costs over $10,000, that can be allowable if it is exclusively to be used for the success of this project. So that is something to be aware of here. And the other category is for kind of a miscellaneous set of things, including shipping costs. So if you're going to be mailing samples for a research project back and forth, that would be in the other category. We
So
want to know if
Andrew,
you,
oh,
oh, go ahead.
Andrew has asked what qualifies as a direct or an indirect cost.
That is a good question.
It's a good question.
I will say, we have written a 12-page request for applications document that is linked on our website, and there is a long section that we have borrowed heavily from USDA's guidance on this, but that will explain the difference between indirect and direct costs. Things like rent, utilities, things like that, those would be considered indirect costs, are not eligible. Your phone bill. If you have kind of general, if you pay an accountant to manage the books for your organization, and they will be somewhat working on this project, but not kind of a key personnel, that would be considered indirect, things like that. There are more details, though, in that document, which I'll show in just a minute. We want to know if you're going to be providing any matching funds to this project. The answer is yes. We want you to talk about what those are. If you're applying for more funding for this project, let us know where else you are applying and how these funds are going to be different, how they're going to fund different things. And then if you are going to directly generate income through your project, USDA is going to ask for an estimate. So if you're using grant funds to put on a conference and there's a registration fee for that conference, that's something that you want to note here. How much are you anticipating generating in income from those conference registration fees, stuff like that. If you generate income that's separate from this specific project, you do not have to mention it. So USDA only wants to know if the direct grant funding you get will generate income. And if you are going to be generating income using these grant dollars, 100% of that income has to go back into the project and be spent within the project period that you're applying for. So something to be aware of. Okay, we are so close to the end. Letters of support. We want to know that people, stakeholders, especially crop stakeholders in the state, support this project. You are not a person who can write a letter of support for your own project, nor is any partner that you have part of the project. We want to see that people other than the direct beneficiaries of receiving this funding support this project. You have to submit at least one letter of support. We have a helpful template linked on the application if you just like to copy that format and send it to the folks who support this project. And you can submit up to 5. Again, what we are looking for here is to see that there is a broad swath of support for your project.
And Meredith has asked what makes a good letter of support.
Makes a good letter of support. I think the more the letter can clearly articulate that they understand what the project is and how it is going to benefit not just them individually, but the stakeholders that are broadly going to benefit, that's helpful. It's helpful for us to see that, okay, this farmer over here supports the project, not just because he's neighbors with, the organization who's applying, but it's a real need in the industry that he's a part of, and he sees this need and he thinks that this would be a really strong solution. The more that the folks writing those letters of support can show us the industry impact, the overall impact and importance of this project, I think the better.
I think that is a really good point, Sam. I will say that is one thing that reviewers are looking at. If this is a potato project, does this have potato industry support? If this is a wine project, does this have wine industry support? And if we get those letters of support and it doesn't, a question comes up as to why not. So I would say the template is a really good example of the basic information that you'll want to put in those letters of support. And then, as Sam mentioned, the support letters come from relevant industry partners and people who are invested.
Yeah, producers, industry groups, researchers, all of those folks, if they're not involved with the project directly, it's great to see letters of support from those sorts of folks.
Eduardo has asked, are there any office hours that we can use to ask questions specific to projects that not only have significant relevance to Colorado, but to other neighboring states?
No, we don't have specific office hours set up, but I'm more than happy to meet with folks. So I say shoot, we'll share the email contact at the very end here, but I say reach out and I'd love to set up some time to talk. Okay, we are at the very end here. Acknowledgements. If you get awarded, you will be reimbursed for expenses as you incur them. You don't get this money up front. We need you to understand this and let us know that you understand this up front. You have to enter into a grant agreement with the state in order to get those funds, and you have to have minimum amount of insurance. Everybody who gets state money or federal money has to provide and maintain this insurance. We need you to testify to that. We've mentioned 3 years of reporting. We need you to agree that you are going to complete that reporting over those 3 years and then make some general acknowledgments about the application. At the very end, you can review your full proposal. It's going to be very long because you will put a lot of good information in there for us and our reviewers to look at. When you go to submit, in my case, I get an error because I didn't fill out almost anything in this application. If you're missing anything, it's not going to allow you to submit the application, but will give you the option to go back and fix those mistakes and add that information. So click on these different links. It'll take you to that section and you can fix it and then submit. All right, that is the application. Thank you for bearing with me as I went through that long process. We just have a couple of more slides and then I want to open it up for questions. All right. Once we close applications on February 13th, a Friday at 5 p.m., they'll go to a review panel of experts. They're going to be looking to see that you have some grant management experience. That is a factor that is considered. It is not required, but it is considered. How timely is your project? How feasible? How likely is it to succeed? What is its impact going to be? That is going to be considered in the evaluation. We want to see that you have justified your budget. If you're asking for $100,000, we want to really understand why you need so much of our limited allocation to fund your project. And we want to see that you have clearly justified why you need that amount that you're asking for. We want to see that stakeholders support it, not just you and the partners who are working on this project. And lastly, we want to see that it is aligned with USDA's and CDA's priorities for this program. So if you are writing an application that meets one of those criteria that we laid out, all the better, because those are the sorts of projects we're looking to fund. Once we review these, we will invite a select number of people to participate in phase 2. Again, this is by invitation only. You'll get a notice in late March or early April, and you get to fill out this 12-page form with USDA. We will include this in the state plan that we submit every year to the federal government, and USDA will go back and forth with us on edits. We'll help you through that process, and then we will have a final set of projects and a scope that USDA says, yes, we want to fund this with these block grant dollars. The deadline to submit that form once you get notified will be in mid-April, but we will be in your email letting you know about that deadline and helping you through that process. USDA will give CDA these grant funds by September 30th of this year. We will work with you to get grant agreements in place. Here's an example of a cover page of a grant agreement that you will have with the state if you are awarded as a grantee. And again, we'll have to collect some paperwork from you, but again, we will guide you through that entire process if you make it to that point. Okay, very last thing. We have provided some resources on our website for you all to look at. I've mentioned a couple of them already. Here's the specialty crop block grant website from the CDA. You'll notice we have a little button telling you applications are open. You can click this button or the submit a concept proposal button to be taken to the application page that we just walked through. Somebody asked about what is an indirect versus direct cost. We have this button, view our request for applications. This is a 12-page document that outlines as much detail about the program that you could hope to read before you submit your application. There's all sorts of great resources there. I would encourage you to read through that document and reach out if you have any questions. You're already at this webinar. We will be posting a recording on the website very soon, as soon as this thing is wrapped up and we're able to put it on YouTube. More instructions on how to apply, a list of all of our priorities here, the schedule, which we've walked through in brief, and then a bunch of resources, links to obtain a UEI, a list of that USDA's list of specialty crops. If you want to read about what sort of projects we funded in the past, you can read through all of the projects funded across the country and in the state of Colorado on USDA's website. You can read through USDA's terms and conditions, look at last year's federal requests for applications if that's of interest to you. But again, at the very top are these important buttons to submit an application and to read the really detailed instructions that we've written for you. All right, very last thing, which I know I've said a couple of times at this point, but here you go. The deadline to apply, lest you forget, Friday, February 13th by 5 p.m. Mountain Time. We have to receive your concept proposal by then. You have to use the online Access Gov application form that we just walked you through, and we'll let you know if you're invited to participate in phase 2 in late March or early April. All right. Here's our email, cda_SCBGP@state.colorado.us if you want to reach out to us with questions, and a link to our website in case you need it there. But Sarah, have more questions come in through the chat?
They have. We have quite a few. So we're just going to start from the top and go down.
Great.
So the first question is back from Meredith, who's asking about letters of support again. She says, are letters of support from Congress strongly encouraged?
Our letters, yes, you are welcome to include those, but I think we are primarily looking to see stakeholder support from people in the impacted industry. So if you want to include that as one of your 5, you're more than welcome to, but we really want to see stakeholder support as well.
Yes. The next question is from Jonathan. He says, Sarah, during priorities part of talk, there were 3 notes, and Sarah missed explaining note 3 in light of a question from the audience. There's desire for more information. Can we go back to that slide?
Okay, let me see.
Okay, there it was. One more.
One more?
Priorities, maybe? Yeah.
The priorities, yeah. I'll say quickly, CDA's priorities are written out in kind of full here. We have a brief summary on this page. They're written out in full, clearer language on our website, in the RFA, and on the application, if you want to see what those are, right? We're looking to fund projects that focus on increasing producer profitability and increasing market access, addressing the labor challenges that face our state in the specialty crop sector. We're looking to fund projects focused on new agricultural technology, and then projects that are addressing pest disease and climate pressures in our state.
We also go to that slide where we had the notes, because I think maybe I did kind of, yeah, this one.
Okay.
Yeah, who can apply? Maybe note 3, single or combined efforts. Maybe I breezed over that one a little too fast. Can you touch on that anymore?
Yeah, I'll just say, right, if you want to work with some other folks in a partnership, this is especially, I think, relevant for more of the producers who may be on the call. Again, we want to be able to see that your project is impacting a wide swath of the industry. And so a good way to demonstrate that is through partnerships. Are you working with a nonprofit, a university, an industry group as part of this project? I think those sorts of combined efforts are great to see, especially with folks who may have more limited experience working with these sorts of grants or managing a project of this size. And again, we see lots of projects, even from colleges, university, industry groups, where there is a partnership between them and another entity. So it doesn't just have to be you. There has to be kind of a lead, though, right? So if a university is applying and working with somebody else, maybe there's a contractual relationship happening there. But, yeah, that's what I would say here.
Okay, the next question is from Lindsay. Let me scroll up here a little bit. She says, are there any eligibility restrictions to past or current grantees? Our current funded project will close before January 1st, 2027, and we'd apply for an entirely different project.
Yeah, if you have a current specialty crop project, you are able to apply for another one. Again, the only time we will kind of raise questions about that is if you're applying for the exact same work before you've wrapped up your current project. We would want to have a really clear explanation of why you need a second grant and what how that work is going to be different, if that
Yes.
makes sense. But yes, you can apply if you have an active one.
All right, Sastri is asking a very good question about the review panel.
Yes.
Sorry, every time I scroll, it scrolls really far, so let me.
Oh, okay.
How the review process works, and please describe the composition of the review panel.
Yeah. So the way it works is Sarah and I will do a scan of the applications, make sure they're eligible. If somebody has an application that is about eggs, for example, we can't fund that project. It's not a specialty crop. It's not eligible for funding. We're not going to send that to the reviewers. Everything else, though, that is eligible, right? The entity is eligible to apply. It is for a specialty crop, things like that. We will pass along that application and all of the letters of support onto our review panel. Um, we set up the review panel. It is a mix of folks who are internal to CDA who have a lot of experience with specialty crops, or who are kind of experts in this grant, this federal grant world. And then we try and invite folks from industry as well, whether they be with industry groups who are well connected in the ag community and understand the challenges really clearly, things like that. Nobody on the review panel is allowed to be applying for specialty crop funding. So if somebody is a partner or a main applicant, they're not eligible to have somebody on that review panel. And every single person who reviews these applications has to report any conflicts of interest. So we will send, here's everybody who applied, and they need to flag for us if they have any conflict of interest reviewing any of these applications. In that case, we will structure the review committee so that they do not review any applications where they have a perceived or actual conflict of interest. So you can be sure that the folks who are doing this review are as unbiased as possible in this review process. And we last year we had 6 reviewers, and I think this year we're aiming to have an even larger committee of potentially closer to 10 or so. But that we're still solidifying that review panel currently.
The next question is from Beth, and she asks, do you have any recommendations related to DEI language?
I will note that USDA dropped some language from last year's RFA around socially disadvantaged farmers, um, um, BIPOC and veteran farmers, beginning farmers from the RFA. That language is no longer included in last year's RFA. We've yet to see USDA's official release yet, but we would suspect that that language is still there. And so USDA is no longer prioritizing those applications or asking for specific information about those demographic groups in the kind of full state plan. That's phase 2 of this process. Other than that, I have not heard anything else from USDA, and I'll reiterate that expanding access to this funding is a priority for the state. It is not one of our stated priorities, but the CDA does support projects that focused on these different groups in the past. That commitment from the department has not changed.
All right, Andrew's asking, when are results reported publicly? Do we release the project's concept/results in real time or at the conclusion of the project?
So these get announced by USDA. USDA is the one who announces all of the projects that are being funded in a given year, and that largely depends on when USDA completes all of the contracts with all 50 states and the territories that participate in this program. Last year, that happened in August, September. I would think that is a good. I would expect a similar timeline this year as well.
Yeah, and I would say also regarding results that frequently during these projects, results are being disseminated to the public as part of the project. And then that information is being reported to the CDA, which we use then to report to the USDA. Um, and I think that the USDA isn't we've gone over this, but they aren't necessarily making these reports public. Is that right, Sam? Are these reports for Congress to justify the program funding?
You're talking about the annual reports that people fill out
Yes.
as their projects go on. Yeah, those reports, I believe at one time were summarized and put publicly on USDA's website. I can't say that for sure, but currently they do not do that. Um, the public can request to see those project reports that people fill out every single year, and it's my understanding that those do get shared with Congress at different points and in some form, maybe not the full reports, but summaries or things like that. But yes, that information um, is not put forward super visibly to the public, but I believe can be accessed by the public
Yeah.
if the public asked.
All right. The next question is from Carmen. They're asking, I want to partner with a high school CTE program. Is this something I can work on?
Um, I would suggest if you have questions about specific projects and their eligibility, I encourage you to reach out to us and maybe, put your question in email. It's hard to answer these sorts of questions without having a lot more detail. I think in the kind of short term, it's hard to say without more detail. So I would encourage you to reach out and maybe we can talk about this over a phone call or a meeting or just over email.
Yes, and I want to be cognizant of the time. A couple
Yes.
people have already expressed their thanks and have had to hop off. Um, and Marilyn has said beginning farmer still asked question mark. I'm not entirely sure.
USDA does not ask for that. We do ask for that information for our own statistical purposes, but we do not use that in evaluating these applications. Well, thank you all for coming to today's webinar. Sorry to use the full hour in a little bit, but I hope you found it helpful. And we look forward to receiving and reviewing all of your excellent concept proposals. We will be back in your inboxes in late March, early April to let you know who has been invited to phase two. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.